Captain Dara Sims had been inside the review chamber for 3 days before the woman on the back bench arrived. The room had the weight of all formal military rooms, dark wood paneling, worn smooth by decades of sleeves, the national flag standing behind the panel's long mahogany table, overhead fluorescents that flattened every face to the same pale gray. 4 generals sat at the table. A legal officer flanked them. A stenographer typed at a small desk to the left. Dost sat at the defense table. Third seat, the lowest-ranking officer, assigned to the case, and she had learned in those 3 days to keep her eyes down and her opinions quiet. Colonel Harlan Voss had seen to that. Voss was the tribunal's presiding administrative officer, not a general, but the man who controlled the room's temperature. He was tall, trim, precise in the way of men who had mistaken precision for wisdom for long enough that they'd stopped examining the difference. He ran the chamber's logistics with visible satisfaction. The seating chart, the order of witnesses, the placement of water glasses before the panel. On the first morning, he had told Dara that junior officers existed in a flag-level proceeding to carry documents and hold their tongues. He had not been cruel about it. That, she thought, was the part that was hardest to bear. The woman came in on the 4th morning. She entered during the brief recess before the panel's session resumed, taking a seat on the gallery bench at the very back of the room, 3rd row, far left, close to the door. She wore a standard-issue duty uniform, no rank insignia visible at Dara's distance, a plain green notepad on her knee. She was perhaps 50. Her hair was cropped, short and gray at the temples, and she held herself with the particular stillness of someone who had learned long ago that stillness was not the same as absence. Dara noticed her the way you notice a detail that doesn't fit and then tell yourself it does. Colonel Voss noticed her differently. He came through the side door with the water carafe, one of his logistics rituals, filling the panel's glasses before the generals retook their seats, and he stopped when he saw the woman on the bench. His assessment took perhaps 2 seconds. Plain uniform, no insignia he could read, a notepad, a quiet face. He crossed to her with the carafe in hand. "You're in the gallery," he said. It was not a question. The woman looked up. Her eyes were dark and level. "Yes, sir. You with the JAG support pool, paralegal? I was told to wait here, sir." Voss set the carafe on the bench beside her. "A delegation, not an offer. Panel needs fresh water before we resume. Glasses are on the credenza. After that, take a seat at the back table with the other administrative staff, or step out. This is a flag-level proceeding." He straightened. "Take notes. Stay quiet or find something useful to do." She picked up the carafe. She looked at it for a moment. "Yes, sir," she said. Dara watched from the defense table. She told herself there was nothing to do. She was 3rd seat. She was there to carry documents. She turned back to her legal pad and wrote nothing. The morning session moved through testimony. A logistics colonel, a signals officer, a statement entered into record from an operator who had been medevaced before he could appear in person. Dara followed the thread of the case. A special operations team, a decision made in a mountain valley, a chain of command that had tried to bury the record of what happened there. The review had been 3 years coming. The panel listened with the patience of men who had read the file and wanted to hear the words said aloud anyway. The woman on the back bench had filled the water glasses before the session resumed. She sat now at the small back table Voss had indicated, her green notepad open, her pen moving at intervals. When Dara glanced back once, the woman was watching the panel's legal officer with the focused attention of someone following a thread she already knew the shape of. Voss did not look back. At 11:47, the panel's legal officer, a lieutenant colonel named Parrish, shuffled the folder before him and announced that the review would now call its primary witness. He read from the file. "The panel calls as its principal testimony witness for the Special Operations Action of Record, the senior operator of the unit designated in the classified addendum." He looked up. The witness is listed in the classified index by call sign only. He looked back down. Witness, stone wall. The room waited. Nothing happened for 3 seconds. Then 4. Then the woman at the back table set her pen down. She rose from the chair. She was not hurrying. She walked up the center aisle of the gallery with a steady, unhurried gait, and the sound of her boots on the hardwood floor was the only sound in the room. As she walked, she reached to the front of her duty blouse, and she began, button by button, to open it. Dara did not breathe. Underneath the plain duty blouse was a dress uniform blouse. The lapels came open as she walked. The ribbon rack appeared first, a column of them, dense and ordered. the kind of rack that made you stop counting and start calculating years. At the top, unmistakable, the pale blue and red of a Distinguished Service Cross. Flanking it, the double spread of 2 silver stars. Below them, the Combat Infantryman badge, the Ranger tab, and the Sniper Qualification badge with its crossed rifles, and the distinctive patch of a unit whose designation did not appear in any open service record. She stopped at the front of the room. She removed the duty blouse entirely and laid it over the corner of the defense table. She faced the panel. "Command Sergeant Major Elena Reyes," she said. Her voice was even. "United States Army Joint Special Operations Command. 22 years of service. Call sign, Stonewall. Current assignment classified." She paused. "My service record, which was submitted to this panel under the classified addendum, includes the long-range engagement cited in the action under review. Single cold bore shot, 2,640 meters, Mountain Valley engagement in support of the unit's exfiltration." She paused again. "I was the shooter." Lieutenant Colonel Parrish looked at his folder. He looked at his screen. Then he looked up. At the panel table, the 4-star general, a man named Aldrin, who had commanded 3 theaters and chaired more review proceedings than Dara could count, pushed back his chair and rose to his feet. The 3 generals beside him rose. It was not simultaneous. It was sequential, the way a wave moves. One, then the next, as each of them read the file that had populated on the screen before them. The classified addendum, the full record, 22 years laid out in the flat language of military service documents. And at the bottom of it, the engagement at 640 meters and the name behind the call sign. Dara's pen was in her hand. She did not write anything. At the side of the room, Colonel Harlan Voss stood with his hands at his sides. At some point in the previous 60 seconds, he had picked up the water carafe again. Perhaps from instinct, perhaps from the need to hold something. He set it back on the credenza. He did not pick it up again. He looked at Elena Reyes. He looked at the ribbon rack. He looked at the 4 generals standing. He did not speak for the remainder of the proceedings. General Aldrin, still on his feet, addressed her with the formality of a man who understood that the room had shifted beneath him, and that the only correct response was to stand straight inside it. "Command Sergeant Major Reyes," he said, "the panel thanks you for your testimony and for your service." He held her eyes. "We are sorry it took 3 years to get you into this room correctly." Elena Reyes looked at him steadily. "It's the right room," she said. "That's enough." Dapra Sims filed her case notes that evening. She sat at the small desk in her assigned quarters and looked at the legal pad, at the pages of testimony she had recorded through 3 days of flag-level proceedings, and then at the single line she had written during the final session. Written without deciding to, the pen moving on its own. She set the carafe down and the room stood up. She capped the pen. She set the pad aside. She thought about what it meant to sit in a room for 3 days and assume you knew who the lowest-ranking person in it was. She thought about a woman in a plain duty blouse, a green notepad, a carafe of water, and the patience to wait for the room to call her name instead of correcting it herself. She thought about what that kind of patience cost, and what it said about the woman who carried it, and she did not have a word for what she felt. Only that she had been changed by what she saw, and that she intended to be careful from now on about what she assumed she already knew. The flag-level review concluded the following morning with a full exoneration of the unit's record and a formal correction of the action of record. 4 generals signed their names to it. The document cited in its classified appendix the testimony of Stonewall. The plain duty blouse remained folded over the corner of the defense table until the bailiff found it at noon, and did not know whose it was. Nobody moved it for a long time.